The Galactic Dominion had conquered more worlds than most species could count. 8,000 planets across 12 star systems had fallen under their rule. Their ships were massive. Their weapons could melt mountains. Their soldiers stood 9 feet tall and wore armor that could stop almost anything. For 3,000 years, no civilization had ever defeated them in battle. Commander Velthus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Shadow, and looked at the small blue planet on his view screen. Earth, the humans called it. Such a simple name for such a simple world. His orders had arrived that morning from the High Council, and he had almost laughed when he read them. Class 15 Mortal World, he said to his first officer, Morthus. The lowest threat rating possible. This is what they send 30 dreadnoughts to conquer. Morthus checked the data on his console. The planet has no faster-than-light technology, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Their most advanced vehicles still burn dead organic matter for fuel. They've been fighting wars among themselves for their entire history. Pathetic, Velthos said. He had earned his rank by crushing rebellions on 7 different worlds. He had personally executed the last king of the Mortith system. And now they wanted him to subjugate a planet of primitives who still used chemical explosives. It was almost insulting. We should be done within 6 hours, Morthus continued. Standard protocol suggests we destroy their major military installations from orbit, then land ground forces to accept their surrender. Intelligence reports that their governments will likely submit immediately once they see our power. Velthos nodded. This was how it always went. Show strength. Demonstrate power. Watch the primitives fall to their knees. It had worked 8,000 times before. There was no reason to think Earth would be any different. Far below, on the Korean peninsula, a young soldier named Taiho was eating his breakfast when the sky changed color. He was 23 years old, a conscript with only 6 months left in his mandatory military service. He had been looking forward to going back to university, finishing his degree in engineering, maybe finding a girlfriend. Normal things. Simple things. The red alert siren shattered all of that. Taeho ran to his observation post on the hillside and looked up. What he saw made his blood turn cold. Massive dark shapes were descending through the clouds. They were bigger than anything he had ever seen. Bigger than buildings. Bigger than mountains. And there were dozens of them. This is not a drill, the radio crackled. All units, this is not a drill. Unidentified vessels are entering Korean airspace. Hold positions and await orders. Taio's hands were shaking. He had trained for war, but not this kind of war. Not against things from beyond the stars. He was just a regular soldier. He knew how to shoot a rifle and march in formation. He did not know how to fight aliens. A calm voice spoke beside him. Stop shaking. You will need steady hands. Taiho turned to see Sergeant Jian loading her rifle. She was in her mid-30s, with short black hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. She had served for over a decade and had seen combat in places she never talked about. While everyone else on the base was panicking, she moved with cold efficiency. How can you be so calm? Taiho asked. Those things up there. We cannot fight them. Ji-Yoon slotted a magazine into her rifle with a satisfying click. We do not know that yet. We do not know anything about them. Maybe they are friendly. Maybe they want to trade. Maybe they will leave. And if they do not? Jin looked at him with those cold, calculating eyes. Then we make them wish they had. 3 days earlier, satellite images had leaked online showing the approaching fleet. Governments around the world had tried to suppress the information, but it spread too fast. Everyone knew something was coming. Some people prayed. Some people panicked. Some people built bunkers. John had spent those 3 days studying every piece of information she could find. She had watched the videos. She had analyzed the shapes of the ships. She had thought about angles and weaknesses and possibilities. While others froze in fear, she prepared. "The general sent orders this morning," she told Taiho. "We are not to engage immediately. We are to observe, report, and wait." Wait for what? For them to make a mistake. The first Dominion dropships touched down outside Bizen 2 hours later. They were sleek and black, built for intimidation as much as function. The doors opened, and the alien soldiers marched out in perfect formation. Each one was massive, covered in dark, chitinous armor that gleamed in the sunlight. They carried plasma rifles that hummed with deadly energy. Commander Velthos watched the landing through a drone feed from his flagship. Everything was proceeding according to plan. His soldiers would secure the area, and then the human leaders would come begging for mercy. It was all so predictable. No resistance so far, Morthus reported. The humans are evacuating their cities. Their military forces are pulling back. Of course they are, Velthos said. They know they cannot win. They are not stupid, just primitive. But Velthos had made an error in his thinking. The humans were not retreating because they were afraid. They were retreating because they were following orders. General Mansu, the commander of the Korean forces, was 71 years old. He had fought in wars before. He understood something that Velthos did not. Never fight an enemy on their terms. Make them fight on yours. In a bunker deep beneath the mountains, Mansu watched the alien movements on a dozen screens. His officers stood around him, waiting for orders. Some of them wanted to attack immediately. Some of them wanted to surrender. Mansu ignored all of them. They expect us to fight like the other worlds they conquered, he said quietly. They expect us to line up our armies and face them in open battle. They expect us to see their power and lose hope. Sir, one of his colonels said, with respect, what choice do we have? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Maybe thousands of years. Mansu smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. Technology is just a tool. And I have seen farmers defeat armies with nothing but determination and knowledge of the land. These aliens have never lost a war. That means they have never learned to adapt. They have never faced true desperation. He turned to face his officers. We will teach them. Back at the observation post, Taiho watched the alien soldiers spreading out across the countryside. They moved with complete confidence, not even bothering to take cover. Why would they? Their armor was impervious to human weapons. Their databases said so. They are not afraid of us at all, Taiho said. Jian smiled slightly. It was the first time he had ever seen her smile. Good. Fear makes people careful. Arrogance makes them stupid. Let them keep thinking we are harmless. Let them keep thinking this will be easy. She handed him a small device. It looked like a simple radio. When you receive the signal on this, you run. You run and you do not stop until you reach the mountain base. Do you understand? Taiho took the device with trembling hands. What about you? I will be right behind you. She looked back at the alien soldiers in the distance. But first, someone needs to watch them. Someone needs to count their numbers, study their patterns, find their weaknesses. The general was very clear about this. What did he say? Jian's smile faded, replaced by something harder. Something colder. He said they think we are sheep. He said they will learn that sheep have teeth. Far above, Commander Velthos leaned back in his command chair and began drafting his victory report to the High Council. The conquest of Earth would be complete within the week. Another easy victory for the Galactic Dominion. He had no idea how wrong he was. Lieutenant Dongwu had been a soldier for 12 years. He had served in jungles, deserts, and frozen mountains. He had fought enemies who outnumbered him 10 to 1. He had survived situations that should have killed him many times over. but he had never faced anything like the creatures marching through the valley below. The aliens moved in perfect formation, exactly 20 meters apart, their massive forms casting long shadows in the morning light. Their plasma rifles hummed with energy that Dongwu could almost feel from his hiding spot on the ridge. According to the intelligence reports, those weapons could burn through concrete walls in seconds. 12 of them, whispered Sujin from her position beside him. She was the best sniper in the entire military, maybe the best in the world. Her eyes never left her scope. Standard patrol formation. No scouts ahead. No guards on the flanks. They are not worried about us, said Hyunwoo from behind a rock. He was the demolitions expert, a quiet man who spoke more with explosives than with words. Their armor is supposed to be invincible. Their database says our weapons cannot hurt them. Their database is about to get an update, Dongwu said. The fourth member of their team was Yoonji, the field medic. She had served 3 tours in hostile territory and had saved more lives than she could count. She was also one of the calmest people Dongwu had ever met. Nothing seemed to shake her. The general was very specific, Yoonji reminded them. We observe. We document. We only engage if we see an opportunity. Dongwu nodded. Those were the orders? But he had also received a private message from General Mansu, delivered by a courier who had memorized it rather than writing it down. The message was simple. If you see a chance to hurt them, take it. We need to know if they can bleed. The aliens continued their march through the valley. They were heading toward a small village that had been evacuated 2 days ago. Their mission was probably reconnaissance, checking for human resistance. They would find the village empty and report back that the humans were fleeing in terror. That was the plan. Anyway, Hyunwoo had arrived at the village last night. He had spent 6 hours planting devices along every path and road. 17 improvised explosive devices, each one packed with ball bearings and a special mixture of thermite that could burn at temperatures over 2,000 degrees. The aliens had armor designed to stop energy weapons. No one had told them about kinetic force and superheated metal. They are entering the kill zone, Sujin said. Her voice flat and professional. Dongwu watched the lead alien step onto the main road of the village. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. The creature looked around at the empty buildings with what might have been contempt. These primitive structures. These pathetic humans. So easy to conquer. Now, Dongwu said. Hyunwoo pressed the button. The world exploded. The first blast caught 3 aliens in the center of the formation. The thermite burned through their armor like it was paper, and the ball bearings shredded everything they touched. The aliens had never experienced anything like it. Their screams were terrible, high-pitched sounds that did not seem to belong to such massive creatures. The second blast went off before they could react. Then the third, then the fourth. A chain of explosions ripped through the village, each one precisely placed to cause maximum damage. The aliens broke formation, stumbling and falling. Their perfect discipline shattered by something their databases had never predicted. From the ridge, Sujin began to fire. She had studied the aliens for 3 days, watching every piece of footage she could find. She had noticed something the databases had not mentioned. There was a small gap between their helmets and their neck plates, a tiny vulnerability where the armor pieces did not quite connect. It was maybe 2 centimeters wide. Her first shot hit an alien directly in that gap. The creature's head snapped back, and it collapsed. Her second shot did the same. Her third shot missed by a fraction, sparking off the helmet instead. She adjusted and fired again. Another kill. Down in the village, the surviving aliens were finally returning fire. Plasma bolts seared through the air, melting rocks and setting trees on fire. But they could not find their attackers. They had never learned to look for enemies hiding on ridgelines. They had never needed to. "Time to move," Dongwu said. He had already memorized the escape routes. 3 different paths leading to 3 different rendezvous points. The aliens would not be able to chase all of them. Yunji grabbed a medical kit and started running. Hyunwoo was right behind her, already thinking about the next ambush site. Sujin took one more shot, dropping another alien, before packing up her rifle and disappearing into the forest. Dongwu stayed a moment longer, watching the chaos below. 47 aliens had entered the village. At least 15 were down, and several more were badly wounded. The survivors were firing wildly, hitting nothing but trees and empty buildings. "Now you know," he whispered. "Now you know we can hurt you." Then he vanished into the mountains. Commander Velthos received the casualty report on his flagship and stared at it for a long moment, certain there had been some mistake. 47 casualties, Morthus said, his voice shaking slightly. 15 confirmed dead. The rest are wounded, some severely. The humans used. The analysis team is still trying to understand what they used. Primitive explosives, Velthos said, but his voice was hollow. They used primitive explosives and primitive projectile weapons. That is impossible. Our armor is rated against energy weapons, Morthus interrupted. Our armor is designed to deflect plasma, lasers, and particle beams. We never considered. We never thought. He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Velthos stood up from his command chair and walked to the view screen. Earth floated below, that small blue world that should have been so easy to conquer. Somewhere down there, humans were celebrating. They had won a small victory, nothing more. It would not happen again. "Send reinforcements to the village," he ordered. "Full heavy combat units. Find the humans who did this and destroy them." "Yes, Commander." But even as Morthus relayed the orders, Velthos felt something he had not felt in centuries. A tiny seed of doubt growing in his chest. These humans were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to surrender at the first show of force. They were not supposed to fight back, and they certainly were not supposed to win in a hidden bunker beneath the mountains. General Mansu received the report from Lieutenant Dongwu. He read it 3 times, making sure he understood every detail. Then he allowed himself a small smile. 47 casualties, he said to Colonel Yuna, who stood beside him. From a team of 4. Yuna studied the report with calculating eyes. She was 45 years old, a brilliant strategist who had spent her career studying warfare. The thermite charges were effective. The ball bearings penetrated joints and gaps in the armor. And the sniper. She found a vulnerability in their neck protection. The gap between helmet and collar, Mansu nodded. About 2 centimeters wide. Enough for a skilled shooter. "We should share this information with all our forces immediately." "Already done." Mansu walked to the wall of screens showing satellite feeds of the invasion. The aliens were landing more troops, spreading out across the peninsula, establishing bases. They still had overwhelming numbers and superior technology. But now the game had changed. They will adapt, Yuna warned. They will reinforce those gaps in their armor. They will learn to take cover. They will become more careful. "Yes," Mansu agreed. "And when they do, we will find new weaknesses. That is what humans do. We adapt. We overcome. We survive." He turned to face her. "These aliens have conquered 8,000 worlds. They have never lost. Do you know what that means? They have more experience than us? No, it means they have never learned from failure. They've never had to change their tactics. They have never faced an enemy who could actually hurt them." Mansu's eyes were hard as stone. "We are going to teach them things they never wanted to learn." Across the planet, similar scenes were beginning to unfold. In America, a group of hunters used their knowledge of the forests to ambush an alien patrol. In Russia, engineers discovered that industrial acids could corrode alien ship hulls. In Japan, teenagers hacked into alien communication frequencies using nothing but gaming computers and determination. The aliens had expected a quick victory. They had expected humanity to surrender. They had classified Earth as a Class 15 world, the lowest possible threat. They were about to learn that the classification system had missed something important. It measured technology and weapons in ships. It had no way to measure courage, no way to measure stubbornness, no way to measure the human ability to fight against impossible odds and refuse to give up. The invasion of Earth had begun. But it was not going according to plan. Not according to the aliens' plan, anyway. 3 months had passed since the invasion began. The aliens had expected Earth to fall within a week. Instead, they found themselves fighting a war unlike anything in their history. General Mansu stood in his underground command center, surrounded by screens and maps and the constant flow of information. He had not slept more than 4 hours a night since the first alien ship appeared. His body was tired, but his mind was sharper than ever. War had a way of focusing a person's thoughts. "Report," he said to Colonel Yuna, who had just returned from a briefing with commanders from other nations. "The Americans have destroyed 3 more landing craft using modified anti-ship missiles," Yuna said, checking her tablet. "The Russians have developed a new acid compound that dissolves alien armor in under 30 seconds. The Chinese have captured 2 intact plasma rifles and are reverse engineering them as we speak." Mansu nodded slowly. "And our forces?" 17 successful ambushes in the past week. 236 enemy casualties confirmed. "We have lost 42 soldiers." Yuna's voice was steady, but he could see the weight of those numbers in her eyes. Each one of those 42 had been someone's son or daughter, brother or sister. The cost of war was always paid in blood. "The ratio is improving," Mansu said. "In the first week, we lost 3 soldiers for every alien we killed. Now it is almost 5 to 1 in our favor. The aliens are adapting. They have reinforced the neck gaps in their armor. They are using scouts now. They take cover when under fire." Yuna set down her tablet. "They are learning. Good. That means they are scared." Mansu walked to the main display screen, which showed a map of the Korean peninsula covered in red and blue markers. Red for alien positions, blue for human forces. 3 months ago, the map had been mostly red. Now it was a complex pattern of both colors. Territories shifting back and forth like a living thing. "They do not understand us," Mansu continued. "They have conquered 8,000 worlds, and every one of those worlds fought the same way. Line up your armies, face the enemy in open battle, surrender when you realize you cannot win. That is the only kind of war they know. And we are fighting differently. We are fighting like humans. Hit and run. Ambush and disappear. Never give them a target. Never let them use their superior firepower." Mansu's eyes were fixed on the map. Their commanders must be going insane. They have more soldiers, better weapons, ships that can burn cities from orbit. But they cannot seem to win. Far above, on the bridge of the Eternal Shadow, Commander Veltos was indeed going insane. His fleet had been in orbit for 3 months. 3 months of sending troops to the surface. 3 months of watching those troops die in ambushes and traps and night raids. 3 months of reports that made no sense. "Another supply convoy destroyed," Morthus reported, his voice hollow with exhaustion. 37 casualties. "The humans used tunnels to approach within meters of our vehicles, then detonated explosives directly beneath them." "Tunnels," Velthos repeated. The word tasted bitter in his mouth. "They are using tunnels. Our scanners cannot detect tunnels deeper than 10 meters. The humans have dug hundreds of kilometers of underground passages. They move troops, supplies, even wounded soldiers through networks we cannot see. Velthos slammed his fist against his command chair. The impact would have broken a human's hand, but he barely felt it. This is impossible. We have conquered civilizations with faster-than-light travel. We have defeated species that could manipulate gravity itself. And we are being beaten by creatures who dig holes in the ground? Not beaten, Morthus said carefully. We still control the major cities. We still have orbital superiority. We can still destroy them from orbit, Velthos finished. Yes, I know. The High Council has reminded me of this 17 times. But what good is a conquered world if there is nothing left to conquer? If we reduce this planet to ash, we gain nothing. The Dominion wants resources, workers, territory, not ruins. This was the trap the humans had set without even knowing it. The aliens could not use their full power without destroying the very thing they had come to take. Every city they bombarded was a city they could not rule. Every farm they burned was food they could not harvest. The humans had nothing to lose, and the aliens could not afford to win that way. In a small village that had been fought over 6 times in the past month. A young medic named Yunji was treating wounded soldiers in the basement of a destroyed church. The fighting had moved on, but the casualties remained. 12 soldiers lay on makeshift beds, some unconscious, some moaning in pain. All of them alive because Yunji refused to let them die. You should rest, said Sujin, the sniper who had been assigned to protect the medical station. You have been working for 18 hours. People are dying, Yunji replied without looking up. She was stitching a wound in a soldier's leg, her hand steady despite her exhaustion. Rest can wait. Sujin watched her work with quiet respect. Before the invasion, Yunji had been planning to retire from the military and open a small clinic in her hometown. Now she spent her days and nights in basements and bunkers, patching together bodies that the aliens had tried to break. Do you think we can win? Sujin asked. Yunji tied off the last stitch and finally looked up. Her eyes were red with tiredness, but there was something hard in them, something unbreakable. The aliens have been conquering worlds for 3,000 years. They have never lost. They have never even struggled. They do not know what it feels like to face an enemy who will not give up. That does not answer my question. Yes, it does. The Yunji moved to the next patient. They have never lost because they have never faced anyone like us. Every other species they conquered, they beat quickly. A few months, a year at most. Those civilizations did not have time to adapt, to learn, to fight back properly. And we do? We have already lasted 3 months. 3 months of teaching them that we are not afraid. 3 months of showing them that their technology does not make them invincible. 3 months of bleeding them, 1 soldier at a time. Yunji's hands began working on the next wound. Every day we survive, we get stronger. Every day they fight us, they get weaker. That is how we win. Not with 1 big battle, but with 1,000 small ones. Not by destroying their fleet, but by making them understand that this war will never end. This was the lesson the aliens were beginning to learn, though they did not want to admit it. In the streets of Seoul, which had changed hands 4 times, the Dominion forces had stopped marching in the open. They moved in armored vehicles now, scanning every building, watching every shadow. The casual arrogance of the first days was gone. Now they looked like what they had become, an occupying force in hostile territory, surrounded by enemies they could not see. Commander Velthos had sent a request to the High Council for reinforcements. The response had been troubling. Other Dominion commanders were watching the Earth campaign with growing concern. If these primitive humans could resist this long, what did that mean for other conquered worlds? What did it mean for the species that had already submitted? The council had promised reinforcements, but their tone had changed. There was no longer talk of a quick victory. There was no longer confidence that Earth would fall. Instead, there were questions. Uncomfortable questions about tactics and intelligence and assumptions. How could a Class 15 world be causing this much trouble? Back in his underground bunker, General Mansu received a message from Allied commanders around the world. The global resistance was coordinating now, sharing intelligence and tactics through a network of underground cables that the aliens could not intercept. They have requested a unified command structure, Yuna informed him. All resistance forces on Earth, operating together under one strategy. Mansu considered this. He was old. He was tired. He had never wanted to be a leader in a war for survival. But sometimes history did not care what you wanted. Tell them I will do it, he said. Tell them we fight as one species now. Not Korean, not American, not Russian. Human. We are all human, and we will make these invaders understand what that means. Yuna nodded and left to send the message. Mansu turned back to his screens. The war was far from over. The aliens still had advantages that might prove impossible to overcome. But something had changed in the past 3 months. Something important. The humans were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to win. And somewhere deep in his heart, Mansu was beginning to believe they actually could. 6 months into the invasion, Commander Velthos stood before the Dominion High Council. And for the first time in his long career, he felt something that might have been shame. The holographic images of the 12 council members floated before him. Their alien features twisted with expressions he could not quite read. High Admiral Korthak sat at the center, the most powerful being in the Galactic Dominion. His eyes had not left Velthos since the report began. 63% casualties, Korthak said, his voice cold as deep space. You have lost nearly 2/3 of your ground forces against a species that still uses internal combustion engines. The situation is more complex than we anticipated, Velthos replied, hating how weak the word sounded. Complex? Another council member leaned forward. You had 30 dreadnoughts, 30 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy. You faced a world with no energy shields, no faster-than-light capability, nothing that should have posed even a minor challenge. Explain to us how this is complex. Velthos had practiced this speech many times. He had prepared explanations and excuses and justifications. But standing here now, facing the judgment of the highest powers in the Dominion, all of those words seemed hollow. The humans are unlike any species we have conquered before, he said simply. They do not fight the way other civilizations fight. They do not surrender when facing superior force. They do not accept defeat even when defeat is certain. Every time we destroy a resistance cell, 2 more appear. Every time we develop a counter to their tactics, they develop new tactics. They are primitives, Korthak said. They should have broken after the first orbital bombardment. We bombed their cities. They moved into the mountains. We attacked the mountains. They dug tunnels. We filled the tunnels with gas. They built filters and kept fighting. Velthos's voice was rising now, frustration breaking through his careful control. Their technology is inferior, but their determination is. It is beyond anything in our experience. The council was silent for a long moment. Then High Admiral Korthak spoke again, and his voice was different now. Thoughtful rather than angry. Show us the latest battlefield footage, he said. Velthos transmitted the files. And the council watched in silence as scenes from the past month played out before them. They saw humans charging through plasma fire, using their own dead as shields to get close enough to throw explosives. They saw an old woman, perhaps 70 years old, detonate a bomb strapped to her chest as alien soldiers tried to enter her home. They saw children as young as 12 carrying ammunition through underground tunnels while their parents fought above ground. They saw a wounded soldier crawl 50 meters with both legs burned away just to reach his rifle and take one more shot. And they saw the faces of the humans who kept fighting, not the faces of the desperate or the broken. The faces of people who had made peace with death and chosen to make that death mean something. They should have surrendered, one of the council members said. But his voice had lost its certainty. They will never surrender, Velthos replied. I understand that now. We can kill them all, but we cannot make them submit. We can destroy their world, but we cannot conquer it. That is what I have learned in 6 months of fighting. In a hidden laboratory deep beneath the Korean mountains, Dr. Mina had not slept in 4 days. She was running on coffee and determination, surrounded by equipment that had been salvaged from crashed alien vehicles and captured supply depots. The power modulation is the key, she said to her colleague, a physicist named Junsu who looked almost as exhausted as she did. Their plasma weapons use a specific frequency to contain the reaction. If we can replicate that frequency, we can make our own plasma weapons, Junsu finished. He stared at the captured rifle on the table before them, its alien design both beautiful and terrifying. Do you realize what that means? It means we stop being victims. It means we start fighting them on equal terms. Mina adjusted her instruments, taking measurements that would have seemed like magic 6 months ago. Before the invasion, she had been a professor of physics at a university, teaching students about theoretical energy systems. Now she was building weapons to save humanity. The breakthrough came 3 days later. Mina's team managed to integrate alien plasma technology with existing human missile systems. The result was crude, unstable, and incredibly dangerous to handle. It was also the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. One shot, Junsu said, looking at the modified warhead. We only have enough material for one shot. If it works, it will work, Mina said, though her hands were shaking. It has to work. The target was a Dominion dreadnought, one of the massive warships that had been hovering over East Asia for months. The ship had bombarded countless cities, killed millions of people, and served as a symbol of alien invincibility. It was about to become something else. The missile launched at midnight, streaking up through the atmosphere so fast that the alien defenses barely had time to track it. Plasma bolts fired from the dreadnought. But the missile was too small, too fast, and on a trajectory that no human weapon should have been able to follow. It struck the dreadnought directly in its main reactor. The explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. People across 3 countries saw it, a burning shape falling from the heavens, breaking apart as it fell. The dreadnought that had seemed invincible crashed into the ocean in a million pieces. For a moment, the entire world was silent. Then the cheering began. Commander Velthos received the news while still aboard his flagship. He stared at the report, reading it again and again, certain there had been some mistake. They shot down a dreadnought, he said. A dreadnought? Using our own technology against us, Mortis replied, his voice hollow. They captured plasma weapons. They studied them. They learned how to build bigger versions. In 6 months, it took our civilization 1,000 years to develop plasma technology. They did it in 6 months. That is impossible. It happened. We watched it happen. Mortis pulled up the footage of the dreadnought falling. Commander, I do not think we understood what we were fighting. I do not think we understood what these humans are capable of. Velthos watched the burning ship fall from the sky, and something cold settled in his chest. He had conquered 7 worlds. He had never lost a battle. He had always believed that superior technology meant superior power, and that superior power meant inevitable victory. The humans were teaching him otherwise. On the surface of Earth, The destruction of the dreadnought had changed everything. People who had been hiding emerged from their bunkers. Soldiers who had been retreating began to advance. The impossible had happened. The invincible enemy could be killed. General Mansu addressed the unified human forces through a broadcast that reached every underground network on the planet. They came here thinking we were weak, he said. They came here thinking we would bow. They came here thinking their technology made them gods. They were wrong. His voice carried across oceans and continents, reaching billions of people who had spent 6 months in fear. We have proven that they can bleed. We have proven that they can die. We have proven that their ships can fall. Now it is time to prove something else. It is time to prove that they cannot stay. Starting tonight, we begin the offensive. Not fighting to survive, but fighting to win. Not hoping they will leave, but making them leave. They wanted to conquer our world. Instead, we will give them a choice: run or die. This is our planet, our home, and we will take it back. Across the world, human forces began to move. 6 months of defensive warfare had taught them everything they needed to know about the enemy. 6 months of adaptation had given them weapons and tactics the aliens had never faced. 6 months of survival had forged them into something new. The tide of war was turning, and the aliens were about to learn what happened when humanity stopped running and started hunting. 1 year after the invasion began, the last Dominion vessel fled Earth's orbit. The ship was damaged, barely able to maintain power, its hull scarred with the marks of a dozen battles. Commander Veltas had died 3 weeks earlier when his flagship was boarded by human special forces. The surviving officers had taken what remained of the fleet and run. Captain Sunho watched the fleeing ship from the observation deck of a captured Dominion transport. He was 42 years old, a former Special Forces operator who had learned to fight in alien gravity in less than 3 weeks. His uniform was torn and stained with blood, some of it alien, some of it human. In his hand, he held the ceremonial blade he had taken from Commander Veltas's body. "They are gone," said Lieutenant Dongwu, standing beside him. The ambush leader had survived the entire war, though he had lost many friends along the way. His hair had gone gray in the past year. His eyes were older than his age. "Some of them are gone," Sunho replied. "There are still thousands of them on the surface. They will surrender or they will die. Those are the only options now." It was true. Without their fleet, without resupply, without hope of rescue, the remaining alien forces on Earth were trapped. Some had already surrendered, laying down their weapons and submitting to human custody. Others were still fighting, but they were scattered, surrounded, and running out of ammunition. The war was over. Humanity had won. Back on the Dominion homeworld, the High Council convened an emergency session. The holographic displays showed footage from Earth, images that no one in the council chamber wanted to see. Dreadnoughts falling from the sky, soldiers in retreat, the flag of the Galactic Dominion being torn down and burned. High Admiral Korthax had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. His once commanding presence seemed diminished, shrunken by the weight of a defeat he could not explain. "We lost," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. 8,000 worlds, and we lost to primitives who still burn dead organic matter for fuel. "Perhaps we should have destroyed them from orbit," one of the council members suggested. "Burned the entire planet, made an example, and gained nothing but ashes. The Dominion needs resources, workers, territory. Ruins serve no purpose." Korthax stared at the images from Earth. "Besides, I do not think it would have mattered. These humans, they would have found a way to fight even that." The oldest member of the council spoke then. His name was Archivist Solen, and he had been alive for over 2,000 years. He had seen the Dominion rise from a small empire to a galactic power. He had watched 8,000 civilizations fall before its might. "I have been studying the humans," Selen said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "I have reviewed their history, their biology, their psychology. I believe I understand now what we faced." "Then explain," Korthax demanded. "Explain how a Class 15 world could defeat us." Selen was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. Then he spoke, and his words would echo through the Dominion for generations. "The classification system measures capability. It measures technology, weapons, ships, energy output. By those metrics, Earth was indeed a Class 15 world, the lowest possible threat. But the system does not measure something else, something we have never needed to consider before." "And what is that?" "Willpower." Selen brought up images on the display. A human soldier charging through plasma fire, a child carrying ammunition through a tunnel, an old woman setting off a bomb. The classification system has no metric for determination, no variable for stubbornness, no category for a willingness to die rather than surrender. He let that sink in, then continued. "These humans have been fighting wars for their entire existence. They have killed each other over territory, resources, religion, ideology, and things so trivial we cannot even understand them. Their history is written in blood. Every generation has known war. Every family has lost someone to violence. So they are simply violent," one council member said. "That does not explain." "That is exactly what I thought at first," Selen interrupted. "But violence alone does not explain their victory. Many violent species have fallen to the Dominion. The humans are different because of what they do with their violence. They control it. They channel it. They hold it in reserve until it is needed, and then they unleash it with a fury that defies logic." He brought up more images. "The classification system rates them as Class 15 because they should have destroyed themselves. They have the capacity for violence that should have ended their species a dozen times over. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical agents. They could have wiped themselves out centuries ago, but they did not." "Exactly. They developed these weapons of destruction, and then they chose not to use them. Not because they are peaceful, but because they learned to control their own nature. They learned to save their violence for when it truly mattered." Selen's ancient eyes found Korthax. "We invaded their world. We killed their families. We burned their cities. We gave them permission to be violent again. We gave them a target for all that controlled fury. And we had no idea what we had awakened." The chamber was silent. "So what do we do now?" Korthax finally asked. "The other conquered worlds are watching. If one species can defeat us, others will try. We leave the humans alone," Selen said simply. "We leave them alone, and we pray they never decide to come looking for us." 10 years later, humanity joined the galactic community, not as a conquered species, but as equals. The Dominion paid reparations for the invasion. Earth's nations formed a unified defense force with ships designed, using a combination of human creativity and captured alien technology. Other species that had been conquered by the Dominion began sending ambassadors, eager to learn how the humans had achieved the impossible. General Mansu died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 81. He was buried with full military honors, his coffin draped in the flag of united humanity. Billions watched the ceremony across 12 star systems. Colonel Yuna succeeded him as commander of Earth's forces. She served with distinction for 20 years before retiring to write her memoirs, which became required reading at military academies across the galaxy. Dr. Mina won the first Nobel Prize for Interstellar Physics, awarded for her work reverse engineering alien technology. She used the prize money to fund education programs for young scientists. Her colleague Junsu married his longtime research partner and had 3 children, all of whom followed their parents into science. Lieutenant Dong, who became a teacher at the newly established Galactic Defense Academy. His students came from dozens of species, all wanting to learn the tactics that had defeated the invincible Dominion. He taught them that technology was just a tool, and that the will to fight mattered more than the weapons you carried. Sergeant Jian retired to a small apartment in Bizen. She planted a garden on her balcony and spent her days watching ships take off for the stars. Sometimes her grandchildren visited, and she told them stories about the war. They thought she was exaggerating. She was not. And Captain Sunho, the man who had killed Commander Velthos, became humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. He walked into chambers where no human had ever stood, wearing the ceremonial blade he had taken as a trophy. The alien delegates looked at him with something new in their eyes. Not contempt, not pity, fear. "You classify our world as Class 15, Sunho said in his first address to the Council. "The lowest threat rating. You thought we were primitives. You thought we were weak. You thought we would surrender at the first show of force." He let the silence stretch. "You were wrong, and I want every species in this galaxy to understand something. We did not fight you because we thought we could win. We fought you because surrender was never an option. We fought you because our children deserved a future. We fought you because every human being, from the oldest general to the youngest child, decided that death was better than submission." He looked around the chamber, meeting every alien eye. "We are not looking for more wars. We are not interested in conquest. We want to live in peace with our neighbors, to trade and learn and grow together. But if anyone threatens our world again, if anyone tries to take what is ours, they will face the same thing the Dominion faced. Not our technology, not our weapons, our will, and our will is infinite." The chamber was silent. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. In a small apartment in Bizen, an aging Sergeant Jian watched her grandchildren play with toy spaceships in the yard. One ship was silver with the flag of United Humanity on its hull. The other was dark and angular, shaped like the Dominion vessels she remembered so well. As always, the silver ship won. She smiled and sipped her tea. The morning sun was warm, the sky was blue, and somewhere out among the stars, humanity was building a future worth fighting for. Some lessons, she thought, the universe only needed to learn once.